Thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to be back at Silicon Valley. So I live in China most of the time, so many of you probably don't remember me. Then I'm going to introduce someone else that you're more familiar with to tell you about AI. Hello, is it sound up? Let's up and try again. So it shows you with the power of deep learning, the quality of speech synthesis of President Trump speaking in a foreign language is actually very, very realistic. And that is the biggest technological neurons in thousands of layers that can, in a single domain, take a huge amount of data and train to recognize, predict, and decide and synthesize at a much higher accuracy than humans. Now, on the one hand, it is not human intelligence. It cannot think cross-domain. It cannot plan in very deep sense. It has no strategic or creative thinking capabilities. But in a single domain, again, with a huge amount of data, it is beating humans in almost every task imaginable. We have seen AlphaGo, we've seen speech recognition, face recognition. There are beginnings now of diagnosis of how to read MRI, and doing a better job than radiologists. So this amount of improvement is leading to what I call 4 waves of artificial intelligence. So in this picture, what you see is what I believe 4 waves of business opportunities that deep learning and associated technologies will bring about to this world. The first wave, naturally, is the internet wave, because internet has more data than any other domain. With so much data, it powers Amazon to predict what you might want to buy. It powers Facebook to predict what you might want to read. And similarly, all the American and Chinese companies, all the great AI companies of today are all internet companies because they have the most labeled data, and we every day are their lab rats labeling data for them. So a lot of great companies, near $1 trillion companies have been created, the 7 giants of AI, all in wave 1, and that will continue. But wave 2 has, of course, already begun several years ago, because you can ask the question, who else has a lot of data? And it is businesses, banks, insurance companies, hospitals. They have a lot of data. In the past, they viewed data as a cost center, as a legal requirement to archive. But now data has become a gold mine. So think about a bank that has all the transactions from you, and now it can use that data from you and all the other users to understand how you invest, how to improve your asset allocation to give you a better return, how to sell products to you and make money from you, how to recognize whether a credit card use is legitimate by you or potentially fraudulent, and whether to approve a loan that you would like to apply or that you might default. So these are the uses that could be done in a bank. And you can extrapolate for insurance companies, hospitals, and so on. And that's going to be a big wave that's running across many segments of business and government. The third wave is what I call a perception AI. That is, you're adding to the AI the ability to see and to hear. So it's computer vision, speech recognition, speech synthesis, understanding combined together. And this also can be viewed as digitizing the physical world. Whereas the first 2 waves are taking big data that's already stored, the third wave is transient data that usually disappears. But now they're being captured and they're being used to power new usages and applications. So what can you do? Well, Siri, Amazon Echo are examples of speech recognition The demonstration you see there is another one, live transcription. And in terms of computer vision, I think the applications are even bigger. You can have autonomous stores, you can have face recognition. You all know this, at airports now, there are almost no humans taking care of our immigration because face recognition and OCR are taking over. And these are all examples of perception AI. And then the fourth wave is when AI becomes autonomous in its ability to move around and manipulate, sort of like having hands and feet. So that is in the area of autonomous vehicles and robotics. So in autonomous vehicles, that will bring about a huge transformation because it isn't just a about a button that you press to have the car drive for you, but it's going to be a synthesis of electrical cars, shared economy, and also autonomous driving. So no longer do we have to own cars. Did you know the car you own is the worst investment you've made? 96% of the time it's sitting idle, depreciating. So why would we own cars for that 4% of the time that we drive? But if there were Uber that can come to you in 30 seconds, anytime you need it, and it's actually always has a perfectly courteous driver because it's autonomous, and it has no emissions because it's electrical, and it's perfect route planning. It saves us time, doesn't pollute the air, less traffic congestion. No longer do we need our parking garages, so it's going to bring huge changes to our lives. Furthermore, when autonomous driving, when they collect more data, they will get better and better. When it's first launched, it might be a little bit safer than human, but in 5 years, it will be a lot safer. In 10 years, it will be much, much safer with many, many lives saved. And after that, as cars start to talk to each other, they will be able to do things that humans cannot do. They can transmit to each other and say, I'm going to have a flat tire, get out of my way. Or they might talk to each other and basically miss each other by 1 centimeter, which humans cannot do. And when they get that good, the only danger on the road to human lives is ourselves. And the natural next step is we won't be allowed to drive anymore. Just like you can't ride a horse to an interstate highway, right? It's the same thing. For those of you who love to drive, not to worry, this is probably 30 years away. And when it happens, even today, we can go to a ranch and ride a horse. So there will be something for you at that time. In terms of robotics, there are so many innovations happening. It's moving a little more slowly because it requires mechanical aspects and not just software. But that will definitely come about. We are invested in autonomous robots that move items in a warehouse, that put packages together. We're invested in autonomous robots that deliver to homes and apartments. We've invested in robots that can pick fruits, that can wash dishes, and all of these will come about over time. And the price will come down as volumes increase. For example, the dishwashing robots is a company we invested in. Would you like one? You can just throw everything in and it cleans the dishes and puts all the refuse, garbage into recycling bins, saving you a lot of time. Now you all want it, right? So it's I'll take a check for $300,000 each at the end of the session if you want one. But don't laugh, because if you have a restaurant with 5 people washing dishes, it pays for itself in about 1.5 years. So that's how this will begin selling. And of course, over time, it will get better and better, cheaper and cheaper. One day, we can each buy one for our homes for $500. So this kind of robotics and autonomous driving will be the 4th wave. These 4 waves together, I think, will bring about huge changes to our future economy. Perhaps each wave can be 10% more to the global GDP over time. Perhaps it might also take away 10% of our jobs. So to make AI work, we need the following 5 things. You need a lot of data that is tagged within a single domain, a lot of compute power, and some experts to work on it. So AI is not perfect. You can't make it do perfectly unsupervised learning. You can't make it learn on very little data. You can't do AI with very little compute or no data. But once you have these, AI can be applied. So about US and China, who's ahead? I'm first going to answer the question in a very detailed way and then tell you that it actually doesn't matter. So I will try to answer clearly. In research, US is way ahead. These are the top researchers in the US. Not only is US way ahead in research, US has been at the center of every technological revolution in the past 30 years. But something magical has happened in the past 10 years. That is, a gigantic market in China has emerged. And a lot of money, capital investment, went into China, with smart VCs helping smart entrepreneurs build products and companies. And those products actually were so attractive, they brought more Chinese users on the internet. And this loop kept going and going for the last 10 years, taking China from 150 million users to about 800 million users, by far the largest user base in the world. And this loop has created something that we never thought possible, that a system that parallels the Silicon Valley. So today, there are actually two separate systems. It is true that Chinese companies began by copycatting a lot of American innovations. And at that time, it's understandable because when Google was started, US internet penetration was 30%, in China it was 0.2%. So what's a Chinese entrepreneur going to do other than look for inspiration? Now, this is not IP theft, this is just inspiration, okay? But today, China has, because the cycle I described, evolved into a completely different way of entrepreneurship. I don't have the time to go into a lot of details, so I'll give you one example. Whereas in Silicon Valley, it is most respectable to have a light tech company, a company like Instagram, 11 people, $1 billion, a company like Yelp, just does reviews and is $4 billion valuation. All great companies, very respectable, all tech only and not touching the offline ugly stuff. The Chinese way is completely different. In China, there are many other entrepreneurs who can get funding and compete with you and even copy you. The only way to succeed in China is to find a business model that is impregnable. In other words, build a business that's uncopyable. So how do you do that? I'll give you an example. I mentioned Yelp. Let's look at Meituan. Meituan is a company that just went public, and they dared to change the way Chinese people eat. And that is, how can we make people cook half as much? How can we make people eat out half as much? Instead, rely on home food, delivery of food to the home. That is not purely a technological problem. That is largely a huge operational excellence problem. It is about organizing 600,000 people on electrical mopeds, delivering to the home. And of course, the price is very important because VCs will only burn so much money. So Wang Xing needed to get the cost per delivery down to about 70 cents to break even. That sounds almost impossible to people in the US, but even accounting for urban density and wage differences, even if you say it's 4 times, I doubt companies in the US can deliver to each home for $2 or $2.50. So how does he get to 70 cents? Well, he hired 600,000 people, he came up with innovative algorithms to motivate them, and he pays them at modest wages with encouragement, sort of the reverse of the surge pricing on Uber, to encourage them to ride when the supply and demand are out of whack. And he found the cheapest way to deliver electrical mopeds, which don't have enough batteries to last very long. So he has to solve that problem for them. I could go on, but I think you get the idea. The way Meituan won was by building an incredible operational excellence system that could change the way people eat. And at 70 cents, 30 minutes delivery to your home. And underlying that is a tenacious entrepreneur who's not afraid to take on the very, very hard and ugly and operationally difficult problem and continuously grind away at it, cents every few months, eventually getting to his goal. And by the time he reaches goal. If a competitor wants to build an equivalently efficient system for food delivery, they have to hire 600 and manage 600,000 people, basically at minimum wages, and still manage a good level of service to the customers, as well as deal with best route finding, encouragement, and burn a few $billion. So that is how he makes his business impregnable. Unlike other lighter businesses, that of Instagram or Groupon or Yelp, that are a lot more easily attacked by other companies. Silicon Valley tends to respect others and not attack them. But in China, if you had 4 companies like, let's say, Grubhub, Yelp, and OpenTable, and Groupon, Yelp, OpenTable, and Grubhub. These 4 companies cannot possibly all survive in China. There would be only one left. But that one is the one that comes up with the most resilient business model. So the point I'm making here is that China didn't get to where it did because of copycatting. That was a good, important part in the beginning. But China got to where it got to by developing a completely different, heavy, and exciting way of building impregnable businesses. So as a result, Chinese companies kept improving, going from copying from the US to inspired by US and then leapfrogging. WeChat is better than WhatsApp. Weibo is better than Twitter. Our investment, Zhihu, is much more profitable than Quora, and these are all examples. But even more exciting is the third ladder, where Chinese companies are brand new innovation. This Chinese model of building impregnable businesses have reached new heights so that these brand new companies are being built and also being copied now from China. These companies, for those of you who are Chinese, you recognize them. Those of you who are not, I'm afraid I don't have time to explain them because each one will take 5 minutes because they don't exist. There doesn't exist another correlate in the US. So now these models are being copied to a lot of areas worldwide. And the reason that Meituan was successful, and Didi and many other companies, is that these entrepreneurs may have begun as copycat, but they didn't copy forever. Copying was just their way of learning, and then they became great entrepreneurs with a Chinese model of entrepreneurship. And that becomes a Chinese advantage in AI because these are the same entrepreneurs who are going to build AI applications. The third advantage for China to overcome its talent deficit is a large amount of capital invested. Last year, China had 48% of the world's AI investments and US only 38%. Just in Sinovation Ventures, we have 5 unicorns in AI. These are all pure core AI companies with a total valuation of $21 billion US. So these are examples where China has already used the capital advantage to push forward. And also AI itself, the deep learning was invented 10 years ago. There have been incremental improvements, but there are no other big breakthroughs. So we're at an age where we're no longer thinking about inventing the next deep learning. Of course, that's possible, but today I think we have moved from the early adopter phase, where very few people understood deep learning. So a deep PhD from US has a big advantage. We've reached a new phase that I call widespread application phase, where what matters is the application of value and creating the value with great engineers, so that you actually need a business person, a solutions person, to work with the CTO. And when we're in the right-hand phase, it's advantage China, because China has all these entrepreneurs who are battle-proven and who work incredibly hard and who are tenacious about finding opportunities. And that's what matters in the second phase. The fifth advantage is that China has a lot of data. With AI, the more data, the better it works. You can see on the right-hand side, no matter which algorithm you pick, with more data, the model becomes more accurate. So in an age of AI where data is king, if the data is the new oil, then China is the new Saudi Arabia. And this shows you that China leads in data, not only in the number of users by a factor of 3, but in the use of food delivery by a factor of 10, in the case of mobile payment by a factor of 50, shared bicycle rides a factor of 300. You might say, hey, shared bicycle rides, that's not data for AI, but it is. Every time you ride a mobike, 6 sensors are transmitting all kinds of information so that mobike extracts 20 terabytes of data every day, and that can be used for AI. So this is all data in a breadth way, because there are more users, in a depth way, because Chinese people use more online and offline services that have the data captured. And then finally, the sixth advantage, Chinese government. Chinese government assists AI in 3 important ways, and they're different from what you read in the media. Most of Chinese AI was basically built by private capital. The government came in about a year ago, as it says on the left side, with a state council development plan in 2017. That legitimized AI as a national priority. That had the effect of setting the tone. With that document, banking customers are much more open to buying products from our AI companies, and we saw that. But it wasn't injecting money into the industry. The second thing in China is on the right. It's about building infrastructure. I think the Chinese government lets the private enterprise fund and build companies, but there are things private enterprises can't do, such as public infrastructure. Infrastructure equivalent to the electrical grid and to the 5G network. So what is that equivalent in AI? Well, I'll give you a few examples.